Hello everyone, welcome to The Broken Quill. I'm Craig A. Woodward.
And I'm James A. Moores.
And our topic today is the discussion of successful writing and the place of art, though the latter we'll only be touching on a little as it pertains to successful writing, as the place of art is a much larger discussion that will need its own video. First, we just need to establish that this is all opinion. Please take everything we say with a grain of salt, and also that me and James are not equal. He's got a degree, I don't. He's the bohemian, I'm the idiot. Let's begin. So, first, James, please describe what we mean by successful writing.
Well, first, I think we are equals. I think people will come to see that. But back to the topic at hand. Successful writing doesn't mean critically award-winning writing. It doesn't mean Shakespeare. It doesn't mean Poe. It doesn't mean Verne. Those authors were definitely successful, but they are a much different ilk. Some are poets, others movie makers, dramatists. Successful writing isn't that easy to pin down. There is no answer.
There's no definition.
There's no hard and fast definition. If you look for a tried and true answer, you're not going to find one. I don't mean successful as in it sold a lot of copies. This isn't successful as in New York Times bestseller lists. This is what makes your writing do what it needs to do. That's something that changes and moves as the craft does. For instance, Agatha Christie wrote The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It was a murder mystery the way nobody had ever written one before, from the viewpoint of a murderer. Spoiler alert for a 100-year-old novel. But it's something that many of the fellow novelists considered successful. But it created something. It changed everything. It was definitely successful. When Robert A. Heinlein wrote Stranger in a Strange Land, science fiction was all starships and ray guns for young readers. It wasn't taken seriously. Then he wrote this massive adult book about a visitor from Mars. Science fiction became something else entirely. So much so that it gets referenced in a Billy Joel song about the most important events of an era. They were successful. They were writing that simply worked. It did what it came here to do. Well, that's not much in a way of definition now, is it?
I suppose not, but how do we be successful in the way that you're describing then?
Well, it's about what you can get the reader to feel in their heart, what you feel in yours. If adventure, the reader feels adventure. Romance feels passion. If you're writing fantasy, they feel the wonder. If it's about important topics, they feel your passion. The audience breathes with you. They feel angry about what you've said, or they feel inflamed to change by them. Bringing out the emotions. For complex topics, they understand what you're saying. It's about making the reader join you in this come along for the ride. Nothing holding them back from feeling your themes, emotions, and passions. That's from an artistic expression view of trying to paint a picture of power and emotion. But Craig, you don't consider yourself an artist. What do you think about that, Prince Mushkin?
I don't consider myself an artist. You're right about that. I find that there's something of an inherent negative connotation between the concept of depth versus popcorn, and that extends to emotive writing and successful writing, I find. I feel the concept of a story that's emotional when it needs to be emotional, sad when it needs to be sad, disturbing when it needs to be disturbing, is often considered to be left on the field of art rather than entertainment. But the point of entertainment is to invoke emotion. It's to evoke emotion. When art does it, it does it to say something. It's not doing it just for the sake of emotion, it's doing it to take a stand for something. But popcorn isn't trying to say a message. The whole point is simply to make the watcher feel excited, to make them feel overjoyed and sad. These things are important. Popcorn is an escape. I feel that emotive writing is important and vital to popcorn, not just art. And if it can't do this, then it doesn't fill its role as entertainment. So the major difference between the two is a lack of meaning between the two. We need to understand that something can be emotive without depth, and I find that's a challenge for some. Art is limited, but it's also unlimited, but it's limited in this way because when you have a message to say, you have an emotional exploration of that message, and that exploration can be deep and it can be vivid, but you are tied in the box of that message. It is a standard to wave speech and a stance to put out. That is the box you have put yourself in. If you don't have a message, though, if you're popcorn, you can explore things without having the need to explore things, and thus you can go anywhere. But I find that it's hard to have both. It would be challenging to be able to do both in one book, to maintain message whilst also maintaining unlimited license to explore.
Now, this is where we differ in the understanding of art. I feel art is the emotive response. You say art is limiting, that popcorn is freeing. I say that art is an emotive response of your audience. Everything has a message, even if it doesn't think it does. We are always trying to say something, even if it is just our own personal belief system on the characters. Successful writing is when you can bring across whatever it is you're saying, and that's art, even if all you're trying to say is, let's go on an adventure.
So you're talking about Tolkien there, aren't you? Tolkien throughout his life constantly said that there was no meaning, no allegory, no nothing. It was just a fun adventure. In his eyes, it is just popcorn. Yet despite that, the Lord of the Rings is vital to the literature industry, and you can have a whole university course on it. And I actually find that quite interesting because this course isn't just about Tolkien. The course is on its themes, depths, allegory, how it relates to things in general. The degree is about understanding why Tolkien is great and what it defines and brings to the table, which is why it's actually not a silly degree. Would you say that that's what you're on about art and the lack of popcorn?
Well, yes. Well, exactly. That's it exactly. Well, that's death of the author right there. And the fact that he wasn't trying, that he was just saying, oh, I'm going to write a popcorn adventure story for my kids. He was successful in that. We have a fun adventure. There's so much more. He put his view of mechanization in there, his view of warfare, the way he viewed Old English literature. You don't get to be Tolkien and say, I am just writing an adventure story. Please ignore the man behind the curtain. I mean, successful writing is Tolkien. It's getting out your adventure story. It's people saying, I love this. I love these characters. I love everything to do with this. To the point, Stephen Colbert can rattle off facts and quotations. Tolkien is right. It's just an adventure. To the people who want adventure. So the adventure is successful, and it's anti-war. To anti-war people, so the anti-war is successful. The mechanization and the dangers of technology. It's successful because you can ramble off half a dozen instances in the book that are anti-mechanization, but just because it's successful on the deeper level does not mean it's not also successful on the basic popcorn level. We feel when Boromir sacrifices himself. We feel when Sam carries Frodo up the mountain. We bite our nails in the final battle and wince as the sword sinks to home and flesh. That's successful writing. Successful writing is more than just telling the story. It's making us connect with the characters, feel what they feel. It can be basic, it can be deep. Getting across the powerful message, making us rethink ourselves. It can be deep and artsy, powerful, or basic. If it makes the reader want more, then it is successful. Think about things that aren't successful. If it's got a muddled plot, muddled characters, you can't follow the action. You can't figure out who is talking. Things stand in the way of the adventure. Things stand in the way of who your characters are and what they say to the audience. Successful writing is about a clear voice, plain and simple.
Yeah, but what about successful writing that is successful, but not good? I mean, for example, not to throw shade, or I mean, it is universally panned and all that, but Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, I suppose you could say that it's good at making money, but that being said, there's something to be said in the artistic industry, I find. It's like the difference between a child's drawing and the work that should be put in the Louvre. That which is just not. Twilight has its moments of drama that has its moments of romance, and it is successful in delivering its adventure. It is successful in doing these things, don't get me wrong. And every writer, even Stephanie Meyer, is capable of creating art. It is difficult to make art powerful, but it's not actually difficult to make art. You just have to make something that says something, and it can still be counted as art. Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, however, are not trying to say anything. They're hollow, which I recognize all writing can be discussed with an artistic format. I feel that calling everything art is sort of like a participation trophy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am not an artist. I'm not denigrating things at that level. I like to think I'm a better writer than Twilight, but I'm not against things at that level. I'm on that level. I am the equivalent of Twilight. I like to think that I'm a better writer, but I don't know. I'm not art. It's what I said in my introduction. Popcorn is important. It is vitally important, but to consider all popcorn art, I find gives a disservice to art. Even if the writer doesn't know if they are making art, it doesn't stop it being an insult to that art when you put them shoulder to shoulder.
Wow, I feel there's a bit of gatekeeping there. I get that Marcel Duchamp put a urinal in the Louvre and called it Fountain, and that it was supposed to be a way of denigrating art, or that Banksy tried to shred one of his auctioned works, thus increasing its value sevenfold. In the end, it's up to us, the viewer, to decide what art is, whether modern, classical, cubist, or postmodern. Andy Warhol painted a handful of soup cans, and that would never have been considered art in the 1600s. The same with Billy. Shakespeare in his day was more popcorn, but now it is considered the most amazing of things. Things change. They aren't static. Successful writing is about this as well. Art can often turn on our view of it. The same with successful writing. Maybe the emotions you evoke in one scene will gel with some readers, but not with others. Scenes some find horrific, others may find laughable. Successful writing, like art, can be woefully hard to pin down.
Well, that is definitely something that I can agree on. I suppose it's a challenge for writers, both new and old, maintaining the rise and fall of emotion successfully in a scene. I mean, it's technically impossible, specifically because it's never going to work for everyone. I mean, I read Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu, and at the time that it was written, it was chilling to the bone. The way he had descriptions of his cyclopean cities and that content would churn the soul. But I had my husband read it, and he found it humorous at the most. He considered it badly written. He found the writing ability rather bad, and as my husband put it, his way of describing is undescribable, which is kind of funny to hear. I suppose successful writing is impossible, kind of like also art is impossible, maybe? I mean, you can do a piece of art, you can draw, you can write, and you can try to invoke excitement, fear, anger, even arousal. You can try and evoke that emotion, and like art, what people see in it is what people will see in it. What you say is in there. Death of the author. Most people may see your horror scene as comical and funny. Your description of undescribable to invoke fear just invokes laughter. So, if we're talking successful writing, I suppose like art, no one can teach you that. There are tried and true techniques marketing-wise, but overall I suppose it's subjective. Final form. In its final form it is subjective, entirely subjective, and therefore technically impossible. And also, therefore, I suppose you should always write simply in a way that makes you feel the emotion of the scene, and simply hope that bleeds onto the page.
I think that's the role of criticism. Not like review, not like people just talking. These definitely have their place, but the purpose of true criticism, be it New Critical Review or New Historicist or one of the many other literary review theories, that's the place to gauge those things in the most objective way they can. You can always disagree with them. I mean, that's the point of art, isn't it? But successful? As long as someone can look at it and say, it's successful, then it's successful. It just works. There are things that go into that: emotive writing, character design, plot, descriptive language, dialogue, sentence structure, even spelling. I loathe to say it, but successful writing has a foot in every camp. That isn't to say you can't have books written in strange ways. Robert A. Heinlein wrote The Moon is a Harsh Mistress in broken English to give a Russian accent to the main character. It is successful. Ian M. Banks gave us Fee Some Engine. From the viewpoint of an autistic man, it is written in phonetic. It is successful. A Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haydon is filled with math, symbols, pictures, and diagrams. It is successful. Use the paints of the writer to paint a picture, and try your best to be successful.
I suppose that's really all we can say about it. Honestly, I just hope that I'm successful. Oh. Well, I hope that was interesting, and if it was, for you listeners out there, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and if you have anything you'd like to talk to us about, then please let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on The Broken Quill.
Well, I thought that was successful, and I think you're a successful writer.
Oh, please.
I think you'll get there. It's nothing like a problem or anything. We'll all get there.
Yeah, I suppose. We'll all get there.